When I first started dating Max, I honestly didn't think I'd ever end up writing something like this. He was charming in a quiet, clumsy way. Kind of like the guy who accidentally stumbles into your life and makes you laugh even when he forgets half the things you told him. He wasn't perfect. Not by a long shot. He forgot birthdays, left his socks everywhere, and once asked if soy sauce was a soup. But he was kind. And kind people are hard to find these days. Before we get into the sweet part, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you're watching us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss any new story. So, yeah, I stayed. I stayed through his forgetfulness, his jokes that missed the mark, and the way he sometimes didn't quite get why something bothered me until I spelled it out in bullet points. But then came the moment I still can't get out of my head. It was maybe 3 months into our relationship when Max called to tell me about a conversation he had with his mom. We hadn't met yet. She lived in a different city, but he'd just told her about me. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, his mom said, "What? She's Chinese. Aren't you scared?" She laughed. I remember exactly where I was when he told me. We were on the phone and I was in the kitchen stirring noodles. The moment he repeated her words, I paused. I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing for a second. I asked, "Wait, what did she say?" He repeated it, chuckling a little as if he was expecting me to laugh along. "Isn't that kind of, I don't know, racist?" I asked. "Oh, come on," he said, brushing it off. "She's just old school. That's her kind of humor. She didn't mean anything by it." I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. My chest felt tight, and I wasn't sure if it was because of what she said or because of how casual he was about it. It wasn't just the words, it was the implication, the tone, the assumption that it was okay to joke about someone's race because, hey, it's just a joke. It's funny how people say things like that and expect you to be okay with it, as if racism wrapped in laughter is somehow easier to swallow. The worst part, I think Max thought he was being honest, like he was proud of how transparent their relationship was that he could tell me something like that and expect me to just shrug it off. Instead, I just stood there, spoon in hand, wondering why he didn't realize how hurtful it was. That conversation didn't end in a fight. It didn't even end in silence. I think I let it slide because that's what we're trained to do sometimes. We make excuses for people. Maybe she didn't mean it that way. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. It's just one comment. But it sat with me. It built a quiet resentment. I never admitted out loud. I didn't like her and I didn't even know her. And honestly, I started to question Max a little more after that. A few months later, his family invited me on a trip with them. It was supposed to be a big family getaway to the countryside. Hiking, wine, some kind of rustic Airbnb with too many throw pillows and not enough Wi-Fi. Max was excited about it. "You'll love my mom once you meet her," he promised. But I hesitated. I told him I had work, that I wasn't feeling well, that I needed time to think about it. What I really meant was, I'm not sure. I want to spend a week smiling politely at someone who sees me as a punchline. And I don't think he ever really got that. Then came last night. We were lying in bed, lights off, some music playing low in the background, and just chatting about random things. You know how those 1 a.m. conversations go? Everything feels a little more raw, a little more honest. Maybe it was the comfort of the dark, or maybe I just couldn't hold it in anymore. But I brought it up again. "Do you remember what your mom said about me being Chinese?" He groaned, like he already knew where I was headed. "Babe, that was forever ago." "No, but seriously," I pressed. "What did she mean by scary?" That word stuck with me, he sighed. "Okay, so she said that because of some stereotype? About Chinese women being gold diggers or something? Like you'd take all my money." It's dumb, I know, but she wasn't being serious. I stared at the ceiling, letting that sink in. "Why would you think that's okay to tell me?" I asked. "And why didn't you say anything to her when she said that?" "I don't know," he said, sounding frustrated. "That's just her humor. She grew up in a different time. People joke like that all the time in France." I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "Yeah, and that makes it okay." "I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying she doesn't mean harm. And I didn't think it would upset you so much." And there it was, the sentence I hated most in the world. I didn't think it would upset you so much. That sentence doesn't live in a vacuum. It lives inside every moment when someone dismisses your feelings as too sensitive. When they tell you your pain is just a misunderstanding. When they act like your discomfort is the real problem, not what caused it. "I'm not just being sensitive," I said quietly. That comment wasn't funny. It wasn't innocent. And the fact that you didn't even push back a little, it makes me wonder how you'd react if something worse happened. He looked at me, a little stunned, like he was just now realizing how deeply this had hurt me. "I didn't think about it like that," he said. Of course not. And that's the problem. I'm not asking for perfection. I don't need a knight in shining armor who goes to battle over every insensitive remark. But I do need a partner who hears me, who sees me, who doesn't reduce my feelings to overreactions or cultural misunderstandings. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about his mom. It was about what he did or didn't do in response. It was about the casual way he dropped that joke into conversation like it was no big deal. It was about the way he expected me to be okay with it because he thought it wasn't that bad. I didn't know if I could go on that trip. I didn't even know if I wanted to keep pretending that this wasn't a big deal because it was. It is. I went on the trip. Yep. After all the overthinking, the back and forth, the late night pep talks with myself in the mirror, I still said yes. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe I just didn't want to start a war over something that hadn't technically happened to me, only around me. Or maybe it was that part of me that always tries to give people the benefit of the doubt. You know, that voice in your head that whispers, maybe you're just overreacting. Maybe she'll surprise you. So there I was, standing at the train station with Max, suitcase in hand, heart in my throat. He looked at me, smiling like he couldn't believe I'd agreed to come. You're gonna love her, he said again, his voice like a broken record I wasn't ready to play. I forced a smile. Let's just see how it goes. When we finally arrived at the countryside Airbnb, it was picturesque. Rolling hills, a stone cottage with ivy crawling up the side, the smell of lavender hanging in the air. A dream. If you could ignore the pit in your stomach, Max's mom Lucille was already there, standing by the front steps in a blue sweater set and crisp white pants. She had the kind of posture that told you she'd never been late a day in her life. Ma, share. She called, arms open as Max ran up to hug her. I stood a few feet back, trying to read her. Was she smiling at me? Was that warmth, or just polite tension? Then she turned to me so. You're the famous girlfriend. Her French accent was thick, elegant, every syllable carefully placed, like she weighed each word before offering it up. I'm May, I said, stepping forward and offering my hand. She looked at it for a second too long before shaking it lightly. May. Such a delicate name. I smiled, unsure what to say to that dot inside. The Airbnb was gorgeous. Warm wooden beams, shelves filled with old books, and a long farmhouse table set for dinner. We dropped our bags and she insisted on giving me a tour. This house was built in the 1800s, she explained, brushing her fingers along the stone walls like they were sacred. Very French, very traditional. None of that new, modern nonsense. I nodded. It's beautiful. Then she turned and said, not like those tiny apartments in Asia? Where do you live again? Shanghai, or is it Hong Kong? There it was, my stomach tightened, but I stayed calm. Actually, I was raised in Vancouver. Oh, she said, her eyebrows lifting. But your family is from China, yes? Taiwan? I said gently. Ah, same thing really. No. Max coughed awkwardly behind us. I looked at him. Nothing. He just gave me this weird half smile like, don't make it weird. And so I didn't. Dinner was worse. Lucille had prepared a full French spread. Beef, bourguignon, baguette salad with vinaigrette, so strong it nearly took the enamel off my teeth. Max's younger sister Camille was there too, scrolling her phone during dinner and occasionally grunting in agreement with whatever her mom said. Max sat between them, blissfully chewing. I tried to keep conversation light. This is delicious, I said, meaning it. Did you learn to cook from your mom? Oh no, Lucille replied. She was a terrible cook. But I married a man who believed a woman should know how to run a kitchen. I suppose you understand that, yes. I blinked. I actually don't cook very often. She tilted her head. Strange. I thought Asian women were all very domestic. No, there it was again. This wasn't just a comment. It was a pattern. And worse, it was dipped in a sweet tone, served like a compliment. I laughed a little too hard, trying to play it off. I guess I missed that memo. Maybe that's for the best, Camille muttered. We don't want Max turning into one of those guys who gets bossed around by a dragon lady. Lucille giggled. Oh, Camille, be nice. Max said nothing, still chewing, still sipping wine like we weren't all drowning in awkward silence. I looked at him. I really looked at him. His eyes met mine for a second, then dropped back to his plate. No defense, no pushback. Not even a, hey, that's not cool. That night, back in our room, I exploded. Do you seriously not hear how she talks to me? I asked, pacing the room like a storm. Max sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his temples. Babe, can we not do this right now? She's trying. What? To see how many stereotypes she can fit into one dinner? That whole conversation was like a bingo card of casual racism, he sighed. She doesn't hate you, okay. That's just how she talks. She's from a different generation. She doesn't mean anything by it. I stopped. But I mean something by it. He looked up, confused. What does that mean? It means when I tell you I feel humiliated or uncomfortable, you don't get to dismiss that with, she didn't mean it. That doesn't make it okay. That doesn't make me okay. He stood, defensive now. What do you want me to do? May scream at her across the table? No, I said. I want you to say something, just one sentence. Something that tells her and me that you see what's happening, that you're not okay with it. He opened his mouth, then closed. Then he shrugged. She's not going to change, he muttered, and that's when it hit me. He wasn't going to either. I went to bed that night with a tightness in my chest that sleep couldn't touch. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what scared me more, Lucille's comments or Max's silence. The next morning at breakfast, Lucille offered me coffee with a smile. You're very quiet this morning. Tired? Or just the Asian discipline? She laughed. I smiled back. Not a real smile. Not even close. But I had learned something. This wasn't about one joke. Or even 10. It was about the tiny paper cuts that build up until you're bleeding and no one believes you because there's no bruise, no broken bone. Just you, sitting there, trying to smile through pain. You're not allowed to name. I poured my coffee slowly and said nothing because maybe it was time they started to feel the silence. The next 2 days at the countryside house were a blur of polite hell. You know that feeling when someone's smiling at you, but their eyes are scanning you like they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you? That was Lucille. Every meal, every passing moment. It was like I was under a microscope, and the person holding it didn't even care to hide it anymore. The thing that stuck with me the most, it wasn't even what she said, it was what she didn't say. The way she never included me in conversations unless it was to make some weird comment. About my skin being so light for an Asian or asking if I could use chopsticks. The real way? It was endless. But what finally cracked something in me wasn't Lucille. It was Max. It happened on the second afternoon during lunch on the terrace. The sun was shining. The wine was flowing, and Lucille had made some sort of cold tomato tart, she called tart à la tomate, which I'll admit was fantastic. Camille was scrolling TikTok like always, half listening to the conversation between Max and Lucille about politics, real estate, and something else equally European. I mostly stayed quiet. I'd learned by then that jumping in was a gamble. Either I'd be ignored, corrected, or served. Another backhanded joke? Lucille turned to me suddenly and asked, "So May, do your parents know you're dating a white man?" It was like someone dropped a glass. I looked up, trying to process whether she actually just asked me that. Max chuckled. Chuckled like it was funny, Mom, he said, lightly shaking his head. You can't just ask that. Lucille waved him off. I'm only curious. It must be difficult. In some cultures, it's very frowned upon. Camille chimed in with, yeah, don't Asian families want you to marry your own kind? I stared at them, the blood rushing to my face, but my voice came out calm. My family just wants me to be with someone who respects me, Lucille. Tilted her head, of course, as long as he's not poor, right? That was it. I dropped my fork and stood up. I'm done. Max looked up at me. May, don't. No, I said, louder than I meant to. You sat there. You laughed. She's been taking jabs at me since the moment we arrived, and all you've done is let it happen. Lucille blinked. I was only making conversation. Max put his hands up, trying to calm me like I was being unreasonable. Let's talk about this in private. No, I snapped. We're not sweeping this under some vintage rug. Not again. I walked off, heart pounding, unsure of where I was going, but knowing I couldn't sit there one more second pretending everything was fine. I ended up in a field behind the cottage, pacing between the tall grass and the scattered lavender bushes. Letting the wind cool the fire building in my chest, 15 minutes later, Max found me. He looked frustrated. Can we please just talk? Okay, I said, arms crossed. Talk. He rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't mean to laugh. It just caught me off guard. Max, it's every time. She jokes, you smile. She insults, you stay silent. And when I speak up, suddenly I'm the problem. He frowned. You're making it a bigger deal than it has to be. There it was. That phrase. That awful, minimizing, soul-splitting phrase. I felt something snap. You know what the worst part is? It's not even her comments. It's that the person I'm in love with, someone I trusted, can't even stand up for me when I'm being humiliated. He looked stunned. I do stand up for you. No, Max, I said, voice trembling. You protect her comfort more than my dignity. He went quiet and then, as if trying to fix it with logic, he said, she just doesn't understand. She grew up in a different era than teacher. I said, Show her that the world's changed, that her words hurt, that I'm not some fragile foreign object you picked up like a souvenir. He shook his head. It's not that simple, but it is, I said. You either let people treat me like a joke, or you don't. We didn't say much else that night. We went to bed in silence, backs turned. A cold space growing between us that no blanket could fix. The next morning, Lucille acted like nothing had happened, made coffee, offered me a croissant. I didn't even bother answering. I was past pretending. Max stayed quiet too, tension etched into every muscle of his face. We were supposed to stay one more day. I packed my things. When Max saw me wheeling my suitcase to the door, he asked, "Are you seriously leaving over this?" I stopped. "No, I'm leaving because you didn't do anything about this." He looked angry now, but in that passive way. The kind of anger that doesn't come from hurt, it comes from inconvenience. "Fine," he said. "If you want to blow everything up, that's your call. Blow everything up." That's how he saw it. Not as me protecting my peace, not as me standing up for myself, but as some irrational explosion I was choosing to create. I laughed softly, bitterly. You know what's funny? I came here hoping to be accepted, but now I realize I don't even feel accepted by you. And then I walked out. The taxi ride to the train station was quiet. I stared out the window as the French countryside rolled by. Green fields, old churches, weathered farmhouses, and I thought about how romantic this trip was supposed to be. Meeting the family, connecting, building something deeper. Instead, I was leaving with a cracked heart and the sinking realization that love isn't just about how someone feels about you, it's about how they defend you when it matters. Max didn't call for 2 days. When he finally did, it wasn't to apologize. It was to say he didn't know what else I wanted from him. And for the first time in our relationship, I realized we were speaking 2 different languages and I wasn't going to keep translating. Back in my apartment, everything felt still. Not peaceful still, unsettlingly still, like the quiet after a door slams. I sat on the couch in silence, the suitcase half unpacked on the floor, Max's texts unread on my screen, and a heavy kind of clarity settling over me. I didn't cry right away. Maybe part of me had already grieved the relationship when I stood in that lavender field, realizing the person I loved didn't have my back. But now that I was alone, the silence made room for the sting, the kind that creeps in slowly. Not as a sob, but as a dull ache in your chest. Like something important just exited your life, and you're not sure if you should chase after it or lock the door behind it. I made tea, sat at the kitchen counter, scrolled through photos we took in Paris just before visiting his mom. There we were, smiling outside a little bookstore in the Latin Quarter. Me holding a baguette, like some clueless tourist, Max with his arm around my shoulder. We looked happy. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. But now all I saw in those photos was someone trying, and someone else coasting, and suddenly, all those little moments I brushed off made a lot more sense. Like how he never introduced me as his girlfriend unless I brought it up, or how, whenever we met someone new, he'd hesitate before telling them I was Chinese American. Like it was this weird footnote to our love story. Or that time his coworker asked if I was Max's exchange student friend, and Max just laughed. How many times had I minimized my own discomfort just to keep the peace? How many times had I stayed silent because I thought making a scene would make me the problem? Too many, and the realization hit me. I wasn't being dramatic back at his mom's house. I was finally being honest. The next day, Max showed up at my door. I didn't invite him in. He stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets, eyes down, looking like someone who'd been practicing a speech. "Hey," he said. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms. "You have 5 minutes." He winced. "Okay, look, I messed up. I know that." I didn't say anything. I wanted to hear what he'd say when there wasn't space to hide behind excuses. "I should have stood up for you," he continued. "I let things slide that weren't okay. I was just caught between you and my mom, and I didn't want to make it worse." I raised an eyebrow. "By worse, you mean more uncomfortable for you?" He sighed. "Yeah, I guess so." I stared at him for a moment, unsure what I wanted. An apology maybe, but also accountability. Something deeper than regret. Regret just means you feel bad. Accountability means you understand why it was wrong. "She humiliated me, Max," I said repeatedly, "and you let her." He looked down. "I know. And when I finally spoke up, you made me feel like the one causing the scene. I didn't mean to, but you did. Because it was easier to act like I was overreacting than to admit that she was out of line." "That you were out of line?" He looked up at me, eyes tired. "I just didn't want to ruin the trip." "Well," I said, "mission failed." Silence stretched between us. Not angry silence, tired silence. like two people who'd finally taken off the masks they wore for too long and were seeing what was left underneath. I love you, May, he said. I nodded slowly. I know, but love isn't just about feelings. It's about how you love someone, how you show up. He looked like he wanted to say something else but didn't. And in that moment I realized something important. I could forgive him. I probably would, eventually. But forgiveness doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means letting go of what hurt you, even if it had your favorite memories attached to it. I stepped back toward the door. I need space, I said gently. Real space. Not a timeout, not a pause, just distance. He nodded slowly, like he already knew this was how it would end. Okay, he said. I'll give you that. He turned to leave, and I stood there watching him walk away. And weirdly, I didn't feel broken. I felt clear. Because for the first time in our relationship, I chose me, not comfort, not pretending, not keeping the peace at the cost of my self-worth. Just me. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more of these stories.